Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, DifferenceWORKS. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend this session. Our webinar is brought to you by the Kaleidoscope Group and DifferenceWORKS LLC. My name is Barbara Sanner and I'll be your moderator today. Before we start, we wanted to let you know about submitting questions. To ask a question, simply type into the questions box of your GoToWebinar panel where it says enter a question for staff and click send. We will ask your question to the presenters at the end of today's session. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can, but we probably can't answer all of them today, so if we don't get to yours, we'll follow up with you via email. Also, we hope you'll take a few minutes to complete the survey at the end of the webinar. When you exit the session, the survey will appear in your browser window and should take less than 3 minutes to complete. Your feedback is very important to us, so thank you in advance for doing that. Now I'd like to introduce Kevin Murphy, Junior Consultant for the Kaleidoscope Group, who will be fielding questions today and asking them to our presenters, who are Mitch Brown and Caroline Turner. Mitch Brown is a Senior Consultant and Facilitator at the Kaleidoscope Group. Prior to joining the organization, Mitch served in a management consulting role with the Gallup organization. Mitch provides expertise in the areas of cultural assessment and millennial diversity. Since joining the Kaleidoscope Group, Mitch has worked with Tompkins County of New York, Thrivent Financial, New Hanover Regional Medical Center, and the Fire Department of New York. Mitch holds a bachelor's degree from Hampton University, an MBA from Vanderbilt University, and a Juris Doctorate from the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. Mitch currently resides in Brooklyn, New York. Caroline Turner is principal at DifferenceWORKS LLC and a speaker, workshop facilitator, and author. She is a former corporate executive and business attorney, most notably a partner in the law firm of Holm, Roberts, and Owen in Denver. Caroline worked for 16 years at Coors Brewing Company, where she became vice president and general counsel, and also headed the public affairs department. In 2010, she founded DifferenceWORKS to help leaders create cultures that produce sustainable results. Caroline is the author of DifferenceWORKS, Improving Retention, Productivity, and Profitability Through Inclusion. She received her bachelor's degree from Agnes Scott College, a master's degree from Indiana University, and her Juris Doctorate from the University of Denver, Sturm College of Law. Caroline resides in Denver, Colorado. Now I'll turn it over to Mitch to tell us about the Kaleidoscope Group.
All right, hello. The Kaleidoscope Group is a full-service diversity and inclusion consultant firm headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. We're founded by B. Young and we're currently led by Doug Harris, who's a nationally recognized presenter and thought leader in the field of diversity and inclusion. We pride ourselves and we're passionate about helping organizations successfully manage cultural change and create inclusion. And we've been doing so for quite over 30 years. So when I think about today's focus, I think about, I fly quite often, and not too long ago, I had an eye-opening experience on the plane. What happened to me was an epiphany rather than an event. There was a woman's voice over the intercom giving passengers the estimated time of arrival, current temperature, and requisite flight information. I asked myself, why is the stewardess giving all the announcements the pilot usually does? My colleague turned and said to me, Mitch, that is the pilot. She's a woman. The emotion I felt was shock as to how my brain couldn't unconsciously process and accept that notion. I know all about bias because I teach it for a living, as you can see here from a list of our clients, yet I still find myself needing to address my areas of opportunities. We all have them, and that's what today's about. What we'll focus on today, gender differences, is really your wheelhouse. Caroline, why is that?
Hi, everybody. Mitch, my interest in this area came out of my own career experience. My career started at the time when women were going into what we'd historically called male professions. in great numbers for the first time. So I was in this wave of women going into areas. For me, it was law. I practiced law for a bunch of years, and beer. I was general counsel at a beer company. So you can imagine in those industries, like many other, when I was entering the profession, there weren't any women at the top. We were just entering. And I understood both in law and in the business I was in that it would take time. It was just a matter of time till women had enough experience to reach the top. Well, a lot of time has passed, and there are a lot more women at the top of professions and businesses, but not as much as I thought. And during my climb of being the first woman or the only woman or one of very few women at a level in the organization, I became really fascinated about the dynamics of men and women working together and about what my gender had to do with my experience as I climbed the ladders and what gender in general has to do with the fact there still aren't a large number of women at the very top in corporate America. And that fascination has led to this chapter in my career life because I now make this my mission. I am, my company is DifferenceWORKS. It is about gender and generational differences and inclusion. And I've written a book about it. My book is called DifferenceWORKS. I do workshops and keynotes about it. I'm really out to help businesses capture the documented upside of gender diversity. So Mitch, tell them what we're going to try to accomplish in this hour today.
Sure thing, Caroline. So our focus for today is providing you with this breakthrough approach to achieving and leveraging gender diversity. This approach is powerful and accessible. But why focus on leveraging this kind of diversity? Because it's good for business. It's good for you, your team, and your organization's bottom line. So our agenda for the day: seeing the opportunity, the real business upsides of having gender diversity at all levels, including business leadership. We'll address the challenge, why we aren't moving more quickly to see gender diversity. We're going to show you our approach. We'll give you a taste of that approach, which focuses on masculine and feminine strengths in both men and women. We're going to introduce you to two characters, Max and Fran. And we will explore how Max and Fran differ in the area of workplace communication and how both approaches are strengths. Then we'll close with next steps on what you can do with this information and material. So let's get into the business opportunity. So first, the business opportunity. There are lots of research that shows that gender diversity, all the way to the top, is just good for business. There are three main reasons leaders should want to see a better balance of men and women at the top. The three elements are the talent pipeline, the marketplace, and the bottom line value of gender diversity. First is the talent pipeline. Think about the pipeline for jobs requiring higher education. Did you know that women earn 56.7% of bachelor degrees? Caroline, what about master's degrees?
Women earn nearly 60% of master's degrees in the last year for which we have statistics. And even at the PhD level, women are earning more degrees. So the point is, if businesses are hiring educated people, they're going to be hiring women. And it just makes good business sense to leverage strengths up and keep them.
Another element of the business case is the marketplace. So you've heard of Mirror the Market. Did you know women make up or significantly influence 85% of all purchases that includes automobiles and technology? Women control trillions of dollars in wealth, and in B2B relationships, what percentage of women represent purchasing managers?
Actually, women are 46% of purchasing managers. So both at the retail and the business-to-business level, men and women are working together. So it's important that we understand one another. It's important that we appreciate the differences and strengths of masculine and feminine. And the third element of the business case, that one that says gender diversity pays, is there are research report after research report showing a strong correlation between gender diversity at the top, and I don't mean at the bottom, at the top, at the C level and at the board level, translated to, correlated with higher returns to shareholders, higher stock price, higher returns on equity, all kinds of metrics. And those studies are by reputable organizations like Catalyst, McKinsey, Credit Suisse, and well-regarded universities. So I just want to pick one. There was a study in 2015 by McKinsey that showed that gender diverse companies outperform their respective national industry medians. So gender diverse companies outperform the median. We can look at Catalyst's most recent numbers to show where we are in actually getting a balance of men and women at the top. You can see that in Catalyst's most recent numbers in the S&P 500, women were 45% of the total employee base. But at each level, as you move up the corporate ladder, the percentages drop off and off and off until they represent 4% of CEOs, means 20. So I said it was a matter of time. Well, in a lot of time, we've made this progress, but we're not at anything like proportionality. So when you go from 45%, let's say, to 25% at the C-suite, where'd all those women go? Why did they leave? And I'd like us to ask our participants what they think. Like, why do you think, given that clear business case, we still don't have real gender diversity at the very top? So could you answer that question and tell us reasons you think that it's been slow for us to get more women at the top? Kevin, you're going to get them to answer that one?
Hey everybody, yeah, so if you just want to type in the chat your answer to Caroline's questions, that would be great. All right, so I'm getting a couple in right now, Barb. So I'm seeing unconscious bias. I'm seeing there is still discrimination. Women are looking for meaningful work, not just workaholism. They think it might be a good old boys network. Families is one that I got here. We're getting a lot of great responses here. All right, so one interesting one that I'm seeing is no men as sponsors to really help them get promoted. Do you have any opinion on that one, Caroline?
Yes, but the lack of mentorship and sponsorship is often mentioned as a reason that it takes a little bit more formality for women to get true sponsors. And yeah, we all know that families is a factor, because women tend to, in general, spend more of their time in a day on family matters. And the one about gender bias, you can't deny that, and we're going to spend some time talking about it. So I think these are there others we want to hear about?
Yeah. Another one that I thought was interesting is Julie said, we are assuming all women want to be at the top. And so I think that that's kind of an interesting viewpoint.
Well, I think Julie's got a good point. The question is,
right,
do women in general want to be at the top at a lower level than men? And actually, whereas of course there are lots of women and lots of men who don't want to be at the top, the research actually shows that those men and women who want to be at the top are pretty much equal. That women do have as much ambition to get to the top and desire to get to the top. But that is definitely a reason. Some people don't want it, or some people just, aren't ambitious for that. They'd rather define success differently. I think that's really important.
Great. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of great questions here, so I think that I appreciate everyone's activity. Do we have time for one more, Caroline, or would you like to move on?
No, go on. Let's have one more.
Perfect. One interesting one that I'm seeing here is discomfort and unfamiliarity with the politics and relationship development needed to move up. So it
That's
kind of
an
sounds
interesting
like
one.
there's some barriers to entry there. Yeah, so thank you, Dot Prouks, for that one.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, comfort, because in many industries, when you look at the top, it's still male and it's still white. And so those who don't fit that profile have less comfort. And I think that's a really good point. I
Great.
want to focus a little bit on the answer that came in about gender bias. McKinsey does reports all the time on the progress of gender diversity. And their conclusion is even companies that do all the right things to overcome the kind of issues that our participants just mentioned still aren't getting the kind of progress they would like, because all the right actions, when they occur on top of what they call unconscious mindsets, just can't get the results they want. So they may have a women's initiative, they may have a women's affinity group, they may have family-friendly policies that make it easier for young parents to climb the ladder. May have programs on mentorship and sponsorship. But if those people making decisions still have unconscious bias, you're not going to get the gender diversity that leads to the kind of results we've talked about. So Mitch, let's talk about our approach to getting to and through those unconscious mindsets.
Yeah, so great conversation there. So going into our approach, so if the root cause of the slow pace of opening up that pyramid is unconscious bias, what will it take to expose and uproot those biases? Our goal is to reduce gender bias by increasing understanding of masculine and feminine differences. Our approach is not like John Gray's men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Personally, I find this distinction a little troubling because if I think about it, I do some things Martians supposedly do, and I do some things women from Venus are supposedly said to do. And I think all of us, men and women, do, so stereotyping just doesn't work. Rather, our approach is to help leaders value both approaches in both men and women. Caroline?
Yeah, so we've shown that businesses do better when they have both men and women at the top, but I don't think that's because women bring something magic. I think it's because when you have a blend of men and women in leadership, you get a better balance of masculine and feminine. Our slide shows the yin yang sign here, which is masculine, feminine, and balance. And I think that's what's actually going on in businesses that have gender diversity. So how do you get that balance? Whether your target is gender diversity or whether your target is leveraging both masculine and feminine strengths, whether it's in men or women, you get it the same way. You get it by creating a culture that values both masculine and feminine, that leverages the strengths of both masculine and feminine approaches. And in order to do that, business leaders, team leaders have to understand what those differences are and what those strengths are. And our approach is to help people get their arms around what do we mean by feminine and what are the strengths of that, and what do we mean by masculine. Here's how we think about it. We think of masculine and feminine as along a long continuum, and the very extreme ends of that continuum are bullies on the masculine side and bimbos on the feminine side. So people, men and women, operate all along this continuum. But if we're going to get our arms around and have a common definition of masculine and feminine, we're not going to look at the extremes. We're going to look at sort of how the average male and typical female operate. So if I could create a graph of how all the women in North America, and I'm talking North America, think, operate, lead, work, I would get a bell curve. And you see it extends along almost all of that continuum. But if you were going to say, well, what do most women do, or what do women tend to do, it's in the middle of that bell curve, that fat part. So that's what we mean by feminine. And similarly, if I could graph how all the men in North America see things, lead, do things, I would get another bell curve. And similarly, it stretches along almost all of the continuum. But most men, or the largest number of men, are right there in that fat part. So that's how we define masculine. Now look, if you put them together, they overlap a whole lot, because they're men all along the continuum and they're women all along the continuum, and men and women have a lot in common. There are a lot of ways that we think and work similarly. But if you're looking at sort of the average or typical person in the middle of those two bell curves, you're going to see a difference because it's at a different spot on that continuum. And so in my work, in my book, I talk about prototypes right at the center of those respective bell curves. They are Fran and Max. Now, Fran operates 24/7, right, and smack dab in the middle of that feminine continuum. But Fran can be male or female. I show her as a female only because there are more women than men at that spot. But she represents the feminine way of seeing the world and leading in both men and women. She can be Frances with an E or an I. Max could be Maxwell or Max, but I show him as a male because there are more men than women at that spot. But Max, 24/7, no matter what, in every circumstance, operates in a masculine way. Humans don't do that. These are prototypes. They're helping us define masculine and feminine. And let me just give you a quick introduction to them. Max tends to see the world as a hierarchy, and to him, knowing where he is in that hierarchy is pretty important. So status is pretty important. So he's good at tooting his own horn, at taking credit. And he thinks in a logical, linear way. Whereas Fran tends to see the world as a circle, as a network of relationships. And relationships matter more to Fran than to Max, and relationships matter more to her than status. And so she's less likely to toot her own horn. She's frankly less comfortable tooting her own horn, and she tends to think very differently. She's the gatherer and the hunter-gatherer different. She gathers ideas and synthesizes them. So you see they're different, and if we had time, we'd talk about why they're so different, but we don't. Let's follow Max and Fran into the workplace. Mitch?
Sure, Caroline. So we're going to actually take a look at the Continuum Worksheet, which for the participants on the line, you can actually download this Continuum Worksheet on the DifferenceWORKS website. You can see that this approach avoids stereotypes. It acknowledges that masculine and feminine are not the same as male and female, and that both men and women have both kinds of strengths, Max's and Fran's. We learn about masculine and feminine differences by seeing how Max and Fran operate at work. In your book, Caroline, you follow them in 10 different dimensions of work.
Mm-hmm.
You look at how Max and Fran handle conflict, influence, and motivate others, make decisions, and even use humor. So let's transition this into how we talk. And I want to really get clear around communication here. So let's see if you can identify which one of us, Caroline and myself, which one is Max and which one is Fran in this little dialogue that we're about to do for you. I'm working on an assignment for Caroline, and I'm going to be showing her my recommendation. That's going to set the stage for us. So here we are. Caroline, you asked me to come up with a proposed color palette for the new executive office suite, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to show you this chair. I'm not sure you agree, but I think it should be sort of the core color. I think you'll like it, do you?
Yeah, I like it. We'll start with this blue color.
I am not positive, but I kind of think maybe the color is more teal, don't you think?
Oh, what's the difference? Show me the carpet samples, please, Mitch.
Okay, let me show you the one I like the best. I could be wrong, but I believe you'll like this pattern too. I really hope so. I think this one is a really nice combination.
That one. Great. Thanks, Mitch. Done.
So that concludes our little dialogue. So who do you think was Max? Who was Fran? I think you agreed that Caroline was Max and I was Fran. But the question is, why did you think that? What style of behavior did you see that you call Max? Let's look at this dimension. The two poles are confidence and humility. Max speaks with confidence, uses declarative sentences, sounding like he knows what he's talking about, whether he does or not. He values status in the hierarchy. He prefers not to show self-doubt. He doesn't want to feel one down, prefers being one up. It is uncomfortable for Max, maybe not you, to say that he doesn't know.
And Fran, on the other hand, tends to speak using sentence structures like disclaimers, hedges, and tag questions. A disclaimer is like this: I'm not sure, but, I'm not really an expert, but, you've probably already thought of this, maybe I'm missing something. So she introduces her statement with that kind of disclaimer. And Fran uses hedges. Hedges are the words that soften what she's saying. Kind of, maybe, sort of, like Mitch used in our little demo. And instead of this is the truth, she uses phrases like I think, I feel, I hope, I believe. Whereas Max will say this is blue, she'll say I think it's blue. And Fran turns a statement into a question by tagging on a question, like, right? Okay? Do you know what I mean? Or she does it with her voice, and Mitch tried to do it in that little demo where she, with the inflection at the end, she said, this is a great combination. So why would Fran use this kind of speech when it appears less confident? Why would she do that? What do you think, Mitch?
I mean, is it about confidence?
Well, a lot of people think it's about confidence. There are a lot of experts in the last couple of years who have come up saying women have less confidence. And I'm no psychologist, but most of them aren't either. And I think what they're doing is observing our behaviors. They're hearing this kind of speech. And so they're translating it into lack of confidence, when actually Fran uses this language because it's the language of connection. She bonds by saying things like, I'm not sure, but, I may be, or kind of, or I hope, because it's less threatening, and she doesn't want to sound uppity, like she thinks she's better than someone. So she's doing this to get on the same level as someone, whereas Max is speaking the way Max speaks to be on a level above someone. And I can't really stress how important this is, this language of confidence, because we link it to competence. In our culture, we assume that someone who sounds and acts confident really is competent, but the correlation is actually pretty weak.
Yeah, there are really two languages. We say people speak Fran or Max. Deborah Tannen, professor and linguist, calls them report versus rapport talk. Stanford School of Business published a study in 2011 which says women get more promotions when they can operate in certain masculine ways and shift back to feminine ways. How did the researchers define masculine? It defined it by 4 traits we identify as Max style. One is that they look and sound confident, i.e., talk like Max. That means women do better if they are bilingual, using both languages to be effective. The other traits the Stanford researchers looked for were aggression, dominance, and competition. All of these are associated with good management, and all are on the Continuum Worksheet that we showed you.
Yeah, all are on the Continuum Worksheet on Max's side of each continuum. And that research focused, well, actually what it found was that women got the most promotions if they could shift back and forth, But we know it's important for both women and men to shift from one language, as you said, to another. That leaders are more effective if they have in their toolkit both masculine and feminine leadership strengths. And that's how our approach is different. We are not trying to help women succeed in a masculine world. There are lots of books written like that. Play Like a Man, Hardball for Women, How to Speak So Men Will Listen. As if helping women operate in masculine ways gets us gender diversity. Obviously doesn't. It just gets us more masculine. And instead, our approach is to give men and women that bigger toolbox. Both men and women can be more effective if they speak and understand both languages. So, Mitch, think about it. Sometimes you know you're more effective speaking Max. When do you think you're going to pull out of your toolbox speaking Max?
So let's see. I think I need to speak Max when I need to establish credibility and expertise. For example, when a client is considering hiring me because I'm the subject matter expert. I think I need to speak Max in a situation where I need respect so I can control a high risk outcome, like if there's a fire in the building. Uh, I think I need to speak Max when we're in a hurry, like, Super Bowl great Peyton Manning can't be indirect and inclusive. He kind of just gives an order.
Yeah. So let's see when you and when our participants, on the other hand, think they can be most effective speaking Fran-like. In what kinds of circumstances and situations is it more effective to speak Fran? So, Kevin, can you get them to give us their answers on your tools?
Yep, the discussion is open, so if you want to feel free to submit your answers to Caroline's question. Um, Corey says use Fran when coaching an employee, so it might be a more beneficial style of communication when coaching, when building relationships, another building relationships, so that seems like kind of a prevalent answer. When in a collaborative situation, Nella said, thank you for that, Nella. Teaming and collaboration seems like one that's kind of coming up a lot, as well as building relationships. Can you speak to those, Caroline?
You bet. I think that the collaboration is actually kind of in vogue today, and the language of Fran is the language of collaboration. It's saying, I've got my thoughts, but I want to hear your thoughts. And speaking Fran in those situations, yes, you're building relationships. You're also building buy-in. Did anybody put buy-in in, Kevin, when you actually need people to feel like they're part of the decision?
Yeah. So there's one here. It's in conflict resolution. Then there's another one around creating engagement. Yep, I see two here that say around creating engagement, one that says creating buy-in in your team that you manage. So that's an interesting insight.
And the result is when you have buy-in and participation, because others are invited into the conversation, you get more creativity. So you actually get better outcomes. And another example is when you're trying to show respect for someone. Spoke at the United States Air Force Academy and presented this material expecting them to not see a whole lot of opportunity for using Fran language. But there was this general, and he had a whole bunch of stars on him. And he stood up and shared that he spoke Fran when he was trying to show that he knew this retired general was his superior. This retired general reported to the man standing up, but he spoke Fran to him to let him know, I know that you got more stars than I have. Any more, Kevin, or should we move on?
Caroline, one more. Gail brought up an interesting comment. She said around conflict resolution. Can you speak to that a little bit? When Fran might be the best communication style to utilize in trying to resolve a conflict?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Actually, one of the dimensions that I cover in workshops and in my book is conflict. And actually, the way Fran resolves conflict is not always that great. But I think the language of collaboration clearly opens up when people's feelings are on edge, and instead of going in and saying, this is the way it is, you ask questions and you show that you're interested and value them as much as yourself. So I want to introduce this concept that has come up in my work about men and women being more effective if they can have Fran skills and Max skills.
Yeah, one last thought there before we move on to that, because Kevin, that sparked something, that last question around the input around conflict resolution in terms of knowing your colleagues and knowing your team. And one way to be more effective when working across lines of difference within your team is knowing some of the expectations and knowing how to manage the expectations of others. So another good chance to exhibit some Fran-like behavior is when you know some of your team doesn't respond well to a Max style. So being able to flex around, kind of knowing those things was something else to kind of just churn or spark in my head when we said that. But back to you, Caroline. Yep.
Well, that's what you're pointing to is the skill of actually reading the circumstance, of reading other people. It's an emotional intelligence skill, and knowing, is this the time to speak Max or is this the time to speak Fran to get the best results? So this skill of being able to do both, I have a phrase for it, and it comes out of doing my workshops with I have a couple other male colleagues that I do workshops with, and was working with one of them out of Denver, and he kept talking about Max and Fran and Max and Max and Fran, and he kept stumbling. He'd say Frax, I mean Max, and la 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 la, and then he'd say Frax, I mean Fran, and I said, that's it. We're all Frax. We're all both Fran and Max. And if we can be intentional about it, conscious about it, and be Frax wise, then we got it nailed. And so we came up with this concept of being Frax wise, which is to do just what you were saying, Mitch, read the situation and know which set of tools I need right now. And we've been talking about this at the level of our individual effectiveness, the little blue circle that says self. When do I need to speak Max? When do I need to speak Fran? But it's also important at other levels. Mitch, tell us about, how do you see being Frax-wise at the level of relationship?
Yeah, no question. So the second level of being Frax-wise is about relationships and teams. And we're more effective with others, relationships and teams, if we understand the difference in masculine and feminine languages, Max and Fran styles. Being Frax-wise at the level of relationships makes us more inclusive. Instead of judging someone for speaking either like I did or Caroline did in our demo, we interpret the language, look behind the style for content.
Yeah, instead of taking it literally, we actually, being Frax-wise, we'd say what is meant there. So if I hear someone speaking like Mitch did in our demo, I'm not Frax-wise, I'm likely to conclude that he isn't very confident, he doesn't really know what he's talking about, or he's not very committed to his recommendation. But if I'm not Frax-wise and I hear someone speaking a strong Max, I may assume he actually is an expert and actually does know, and he may not. And I've got stories about that if we have time. The third level, though, is the level of organization, which is a culture where you have a critical mass of Frax-wise leaders, people who understand the Fran approach to things and the Max approach to things in both men and women. But at this level, what it takes is understanding how those differences bump up against unconscious bias and being able to break through those forms of unconscious bias. So the organizational level is where we get to the point of understanding bias in the context of Max and Fran. And we uproot, there are lots of forms of unconscious bias, what McKinsey calls mindsets. And here are 4 that we focus on. The double bind, which is judging a woman when she is too Max, you know that B word, or when she is too Fran. Judging her as weak or lacking in leadership. I read an article very recently about senior women who have gotten feedback both that they're too masculine and that they're too feminine. That's the double bind. The comfort principle we actually touched on earlier when our participants were talking about why that pyramid has stuck around for so long, and that is we tend to be comfortable with people like ourselves. So if the decision makers staffing teams or making promotions are more comfortable with somebody, that person's more likely to get a shot than someone who's different. And unconscious images is like that. It's the pictures we have of leadership, and very naturally we all have in our minds at the unconscious level that leaders look like tall, white, thin males. Wish we had time to dig at that one. And the last one is presumed credibility. Whose voice do you presume carries expertise or credibility? And it tends to be the masculine voice. So if we had time, we would go through some of these forms of unconscious bias. But let's move on, Mitch.
Yeah, I wish we could dig, a little bit more into unconscious bias and get to all three levels of being frax-wise. But let's check out what we've done here today. So we have focused on being frax-wise for personal effectiveness. In our workshop, we looked at the other two levels as well. In our workshop, we can look at the other two levels as well. We have worked on one dimension of the masculine, feminine continuum. In our workshop, we can cover more of them. And then, understanding Max and Fran can make us aware of unconscious biases and create cultures that can leverage the value of both and see a better bottom line. Remember the business case where we started, attracting and retaining the talent pool, mirroring the market and tapping the huge women's market, and capturing that bottom line value of gender diversity. Gender diversity is correlated with higher engagement, retention, productivity, and profits. That's because gender diverse companies tend to have frax-wise people, frax-wise leaders, and a frax-wise culture. We hope you see the value of being frax-wise for yourself, for you as a leader, and for your organization.
So Kevin, let's see if we've got some questions. We've got enough time, I think, to spend about, 5 minutes on questions.
Great. So if everyone wants to type in your questions, we will be accepting those right now. I have one or two coming in. One is, I'm not sure if my organization values masculine and feminine strengths. How would I know? What would it look like? Great question.
No, that's a great one. What would it look like if you lived in a culture where both masculine and feminine are valued? You would see an organization where those biases we put up there, if they come up, people know how to deal with them. If they begin to judge a woman for being too Max-like, they can check their own thinking on that. So you would see an organization where women are understood for what they said, not for how they said it. You'd probably see in meetings both men and women being able to put their idea on the table and get credit for it. You'd see people really working to flex their Fran and their Max muscles. So you begin to see numbers change. That's our bet.
Great. Great. Another one I have here from Jennifer. How do you engage leaders who define the organization's culture but have pervasive implicit biases? Great question, Jennifer.
It's sort of the $64 million question, isn't it, Jennifer? We know the business case. I think that's one way some leaders can actually hear, oh my goodness, there's something in this for me. Believe it or not, I think leaders, even those you're talking about, those who don't know what they don't know, they don't know that that bias is making them not hear the value of Fran, not see Fran as leadership material, not think of Fran when staffing big teams. That's the kind of person I think you're talking about, Jennifer. So if first I'd start with a business case. How is this good for you? If those leaders have daughters or wives who work, there's a conversation opener to how they want the world, so there's an equal playing field for their daughters or wives. It's unfortunate, but this really is an issue because there was a recent research piece that surveyed a lot of board members on the S&P 500, and unfortunately about 80% of the men on the boards didn't value diversity all that much. And a lot more women value diversity, I think, because in a way we are diverse because we're not in the power positions in as great a number. So the challenge of having this be heard and breaking through gender bias is really hard.
Yeah,
And another obstacle, go ahead, Mitch.
yeah, I'll add one more piece there in terms of, there are a few ways to identify bias. And even identifying bias at that level of the organization, these two ways still hold evident. You can have somebody tell you about it, right, about the bias, or you can have somebody tell you about you. And oftentimes, if you think about an organization and the way we position ourselves and come in and to have that conversation, and sometimes leaders don't really have the peripheral vision to kind of know or have the pulse on how their organization feels in these ways. Because I guarantee you, if the organization isn't valuing gender diversity, I think that the negative consequences and byproducts of that will be evident in the voices of the employees and the voices of the organization, and sometimes having that brought to light and that realization is also helpful in creating the inspiration at that level.
Like a 360 survey. So you're saying, yeah, I know you think you're enlightened, but here's what your people think. It's a touchy subject because it's real easy to approach this kind of topic in a way that makes people defensive. If we do the blame and shame game, we are not going to get anywhere. We can't walk into a room and say, why are you so biased? Because what is heard is I'm a bigot or I'm, a Neanderthal. And we have to back off, which is why we don't talk about men and women. We need to back off and talk about the strengths of both. The other one is, let me just finish this. If we keep talking about men and women, we're making this about them. A lot of people think gender diversity is about making room for women, when in fact it's a business case and it's about men and women. Kevin, did you have another one?
Yeah, I was going to say that Donna had a great question that was kind of in line with that. It was, women are trained to lead with nice. How can we infuse the right lead with direct into the company culture? Like, how can you infuse leading with direct when Donna feels women are trained to kind of lead with nice? And so I think you were kind of speaking into that. Yep.
Yeah, I was when I was talking about the double bind, that culturally women are rewarded for being nice, but when you get into the corporate world, nice isn't correlated with leadership. And we want women to learn to be direct, but it is sort of a tightrope. But women need to be direct in a way that's not going to get them called names. So how do we, I think there are two pieces to that, and one is to coach women to walk that tightrope, but I think the more important one is to change the image of leadership so that nice is seen as a leadership quality. Nice is a pretty shorthand one, but Fran-like. And I think we can do that. I think that's what our workshops are designed to do, to have people see that Fran-like qualities are very important to have on your team and in your organization.
We'd like to just show you some of the kinds of workshops we can offer. These are just examples of workshops that can help your team or organization capture the business benefits of gender diversity that we've kind of outlined here today. And for your participation today, we'd like to offer you something. So we want to offer you a complimentary 30-minute consultation and an outline of the business case with kind of some links to the research, as well as a presentation for your organization. So we can just answer some of that, those questions about how does being FRAX-wise look at inside of my organization? What is true achievement of gender diversity look like? What do we have to do? Where do we have to go? So here's how to stay connected with DifferenceWORKS. Please take a minute to jot some of these down.
I just want to remind them that business case is free and downloadable, and also the Continuum they can download from my website.
I'll give you a couple more seconds to make sure you can record this information.
And Kaleidoscope has it if you reach out to Kaleidoscope too.
Yep. And of course, here's how to stay connected with KG. Find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, of course, our webpage, and there's our number there as well.
And of course, with the prevalence of social media nowadays, if you have the opportunity to follow either DifferenceWORKS or Kaleidoscope Group on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, you'll have the opportunity to be updated on all of the upcoming webinars and the latest information that we have. So we encourage you to reach out to us and follow or link with us on social media.
And I just want to thank everybody for participating. We hope you see the value of being FraxWise for yourselves in your own career. We hope you see the value of being FraxWise for yourself as a leader and working with others. We hope you go forth and practice being FraxWise. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.